Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this FlaskUp.com Mr. Pandaria raiding guide. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the heroic mode version of the Iron Juggernaut in the Siege of Orgrimmar raid. Now, in order to complete this fight, you're going to want to bring 2 tanks, 2 to 3 healers, preferably 3 because the damage in this fight is fairly high, and then the remaining a mixture of both melee and ranged DPS. Now, if you don't have a good understanding of the normal mode version of this encounter, then I recommend you click on the link in the video description below or head on over to flaskup.com in order to view our normal mode guide. And since this is a heroic mode encounter, you should assume that every ability that has been carried over from normal mode will deal significantly more damage. Now, sadly, this fight is also very similar to the normal mode. However, there have been a few new abilities added in order to try and spice up your healers' lives just a little bit more. The encounter is still a 2-phase encounter, and during phase 2, just like in the normal mode, the Iron Juggernaut will not have to be tanked, so you can keep that in mind for later on in the guide. Now, during phase 1, you'll have one new ability to deal with, and this is called Ricochet. And this will cause the Iron Juggernaut to launch the massive saw blade that he's got attached to his arm at your raid, causing a very high amount of physical damage to anyone that does come into contact with this blade as it whirls around and ricochets between distant players. Now, from what we gathered, the only way to deal with this was to make sure that anyone between the 2 furthest away players was not getting hit by this ricocheting saw blade, and then your healers just have to heal through the damage. During this phase, there is quite a bit of damage going on, so you do need to kind of position yourselves in such a way that you're able to keep on, kind of AoE healing to a certain extent, but also not grouping up too much, because if the ricochet does go off and you're all grouped up, it's going to hit everybody and deal a lot of damage. Unfortunately, it's just one of those abilities that you've got to kind of be aware of and deal with correctly. Now, during this phase, you're still also going to have to deal with the lovely crawler mines, and just like in the normal mode version of this fight, we found that having tanks take care of the crawler mines was the best bet at all times. You can still have players such as hunters using deterrence or priests using dispersion taking care of the crawler mines, but you do need to keep in mind that the initial blast of damage has gone up quite a bit, so you will take a lot more if you aren't using something that just negates damage altogether. So that is phase 1. You've just got one new ability to deal with, and you just need to make sure you don't, stack up stupidly. It's also worth noting that during phase 1, your positioning should change ever so slightly. In the normal mode guide, I think we recommended you stand near the fence where you walk in to fight Iron Juggernaut, whereas on heroic mode, stand to the right hand side of Iron Juggernaut, so when you walk through the gate, you go to the right hand side, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because this benefits you massively for phase 2. Now, during phase 2, you've got one new ability to deal with, and you should also keep in mind, as I previously mentioned, that during this phase the Iron Juggernaut will still plant himself into the ground and will not have to be tanked. Now, the new ability that you're going to have to deal with is called Mortar Barrage, and this will cause him to rapidly fire loads of the mortar blasts towards any of his sides, which will deal a massive amount of fire damage to anyone that gets caught in the blast radius. Now, the blast radius is marked with a red circle on the ground, and you need to avoid this. It's not going to be good if you do end up getting hit by this. You will have very sad times, and it will not be fun. So this links back to what I said at the end of the part where I spoke about phase 1, in standing to the right hand side of the boss. Now, because of the Mortar Barrage, you can't really stand near the boss and stack up and heal through this phase. So what we do is we use the Iron Juggernaut's Shock Pulse ability against him in a way, so to speak, because as we're standing to the right hand side of the boss, when he casts his Shock Pulse ability, he will knock us all back very, very far, and he will not be kind of in range of us, so to speak. So as you can see in the video, the Mortar Barrage is going off around the boss, but it's not targeting us at all because we're out of his range for the Mortar Blast, or the Mortar Barrage even. So when you're knocked back and, at the very far wall, you can then stack up an AoE heal. You will still need to be aware of the explosive tar and the cutter laser, as this does still reach you and you need to make sure you're not running the laser through the tar just like on normal mode. Again, the healing requirements for this phase are stupidly high, so you do want to try and make use of any healing cooldowns or personal cooldowns that you have got, and also stack up to AoE heal as much as you possibly can, as it will be safe. When this phase ends, you need to keep in mind that the Iron Juggernaut will run towards you, as, you know, one of your tanks will have threat on him, and you need to make sure you take him back into position as fast as you possibly can because of his Flame Vents ability, which is a frontal cone. You don't want that being hit on your raid, as it will deal unnecessary damage. Using this tactic of getting knocked back far away from the boss does reduce your damage uptime on him, but if you can survive through this phase, phase 1 is fairly simple and you shouldn't really have any issues meeting any specific enrage timers. So that's going to do it for this Mists of Pandaria raiding guide. It was a nice short and sweet one, and if you would like to view a written version of this guide, then you can head on over to flaskup.com or click on the link in the video description below. Alternatively, if you'd like to view any of our other heroic mode raiding guides, then you can click on any of the annotations that are currently on screen now. As always, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in future Mists of Pandaria raiding guides, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel.